Welcome to Movate Talks, Business Insights Unplugged. Join us as we share insights and perspectives from technology and operations leaders, industry analysts, and visionaries on how today's technology trends are transforming their businesses and communities. Sit back and enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Movate Talks, Business Insights Unplugged. I'm Jeff Farr, Senior Vice President at Movate, and your host for this episode. I lead our go-to-market strategy at Movate Sales Edge, which is essentially all things sales from lead generation all the way through retention. Today, we are deep diving into the challenges around customer retention and how Reef.ai is tackling this and the role strategically this partnership plays in our go-to-market strategy. Leading us through this discussion is a guest who has navigated this challenging terrain with incredible vision. He's an experienced go-to-market leader with over 2 decades of success in solution selling, managing complex enterprise processes, and scaling sales organizations to drive exponential growth. Please welcome Chris King, Head of Sales and Go-to-Market at Reef.ai. Chris, thank you so much for carving out time today to join the show.
Jeff, thank you. Good to see you again. Always willing to make time for you. Appreciate you having me on your podcast. Very, very excited to be here today.
Great. Hey, Chris, let's just flash back to the very beginning. Before Reef was even a product sketch, what was the single frustrating industry challenge that served as the true genesis, kind of the initial blueprint for the entire Reef concept?
So Reef.ai, like many companies, originated from a founder facing a significant and common business problem, and then bootstrapping, cobbling together a solution, and in the process, realizing that not only does there have to be a better way, but that every other company probably faces a very similar problem and could benefit. And so Brent Grimes, Reef.ai co-founder, was the head of global customer success for about 8 years at MuleSoft. During that time, the company grew from 50 million to over $1 billion through a public exit and then later an acquisition by Salesforce. And so clearly it was a period of rapid growth in revenue and customers, but like every other company, there was a lot of pressure to grow profitably. And as they prepared for exit, there's a strong push to grow NRR by double digits while controlling OpEx and headcount. And so Brent's team faced this challenge. They had all the standard tech, Salesforce, Gainsight, et cetera, but they were running at full capacity. And Brent realized he just couldn't continue to spread their limited resources across more and more customers. And automating and just running faster, wasn't going to take them so far. They tapped out on kind of that path. So he had to find a way to reprioritize his customer success, the sales, the support, the pro-serve time, attention, and resources daily, weekly, monthly on those customers who needed attention now, like those that were most at risk for churn or most an opportunity for expansion. And so the answer was, how could they use their customer data to more accurately identify predictably, consistently, and ideally months before renewal, those outliers, right? Those customers that were most at risk for churn or most opportunity to expand. And so they had to identify those so they could best decide, how do we maximize resource attention on those customers? And so he talks about how he cobbled together some data and analyst resources, tested different machine learning techniques, tested different sources, experimented with how best to deliver those signals to teams that didn't overwhelm them with busy work, et cetera. And after a few quarters, he cracked the code and he was able to deliver double-digit NRR growth without adding headcount. And so he realized that he couldn't continue to do this manually. It just doesn't scale, too costly, at best a once-a-year planning exercise if he kept to do it manually. But that's the idea that then Reef.ai was born from.
I understand that market is huge. So now you're at that point, you're seeing the value, you now have this clearly defined pain. How or why did you settle on the existing architecture or framework that exists in the version of Reef.ai today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is born from Brent's experience trying to do this manually at MuleSoft. And so Reef.ai is built really around a couple or several key principles. The most obvious one is, to be successful, you have to use the common customer data that every company has today, right? That's CRM data, support, product usage data, sentiment scores, right? The standard data available, you have to be able to leverage that. So we built proprietary tooling to connect to all those different data sources and pull that into an AI-ready data set containing, basically a historical record for every current and past customer. So that's the most important first one, because you need that AI ready data set to then do everything else. The next principle is you have to leverage the most recent and latest predictive machine learning techniques, which allow you to do a few things. You can build different model types that tuned specifically to the unique customer data that every one of our client has. Every client has they have the similar data types and objects, but they have different customers, different products. So you have to be able to tune your model specifically to their data. Then you have to also tune models specifically to different net revenue retention use cases. So full logo churn is different than down renewal, which is different than expansion or upsell. Revenue forecasting is another use case. And then lastly, as I talked about, you have to be able to be time sensitive. You have to make sure these models are focused on looking at predicting when someone's going to be at risk for churn or opportunity to expand. And so that last part is the most important, or one of the most important when you're thinking about revenue retention and churn risk, because it's not good enough to just know why someone's at risk, but you have to be able to know when, right? And our models do that. We can talk at some point if you care about how we do that. But and then lastly, it's only so good if you have a model that's predictive, but if you don't deliver that model in a way that people respond to it or care about it, then it's really not that useful. And so lastly, principle is our solution addresses both how do you make sure that the teams that are receiving the signal trust the signal? So you have to make it not a black box. You have to make sure that you expose through back testing and prove, hey, which of that client's customer data signals are the most predictive of future churn or expansion. So you have to be able to prove that. And then you have to make sure that you're not just throwing and auto-assigning tasks to people because they'll ignore them. They're already overburdened. And so we have a unique way of alerting those teams 6 to 9 months in advance of renewal and allowing them to make decisions, track the decisions they make, and then measure the impact.
Yeah, that's a very impressive part of the story. So to me, just on a side note, when I first saw the product, I was just blown away because, as everyone knows, on the front end of the sales cycle, the vision of an ideal customer profile, ICP, became a big deal. So everyone started looking at, hey, you've got this huge target universe. Who out of that should we go after to maximize our time, in our acquisition strategy, right? And when I saw Reef, I was like, that is exactly what the ICP is on the back end of the life cycle. You're using data to go after the most appropriate churn at risk folks first, and then go and have a machine learning model to go get them, right? So that's what blew me away. So tell me about.
One more thing. What I think is interesting is, you guys are so good at process discipline, right? The services that you provide your technology companies on the part of your business, your Movate Sales Edge related to customer retention, is you guys have cracked the code, at least our view, cracked the code on the process element of it. Like, how do you get really good at consistently following these steps in the process to maximize retention? And we're coming at it from a slightly different angle and a complementary angle, which is, well, how do you isolate the signals that are most important to apply those process controls that you have right now and far in advance of renewal?
Absolutely. So let's talk specifically application, right? Tell me about the first or the biggest success story when this kind of machine learning vision, a moment in the launch or a client where your core value proposition at Reef was truly proven in the field.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So it probably is one of our earliest clients, a company called Abrigo. They're a few $100 million ARR technology company. They specialize in providing solutions that are around fraud detection, compliance, credit risk to financial institutions, banks, credit unions, regional banks, et cetera. And when we met their CCO, Andy Snow, they had internally built what they thought was a pretty good health score. It was subjective, it was rules-based, but it was based on tracking customer standard product usage data that they were capturing. And so it was a good general customer health signal. It wasn't predictive, and it wasn't able to produce predictions around individual customer risk, and it wasn't time sensitive, but it was helping them improve churn and customer retention. But they sold a lot of products. So tracking usage across all those different products was getting trickier. And they were also blind to pockets of risk. And so they were losing important revenue at renewal, down renewal, losses in specific products, et cetera. And so, when Andy came to us, he said, hey, I'm interested if you guys can help. Let's see what you can do. So we started with what's called a full logo churn model. So delivering churn risk alerts 6 to 9 months in advance of renewal. And that's typically where we start with customers. It allows us to get a view into their data and measure which of those data signals are most predictive, et cetera. And so we launched that model, and we had some pretty impressive results in year one. And these are numbers that Andy has quoted. Gross revenue retention raised 5 percentage points, grew from 85 to 90%. Our model was able to identify over a couple million, 2.3 million exactly, in average customers at risk that their previous scoring model just didn't even see. And that gained a lot of trust in them that we were able to find signals that they were not able to see themselves. And as a result, dollar churn rate dropped by over 50%. And one of the added knock-on benefits, which we didn't really expect at the time, but has since become an important use case application for us as well, is that because we are tracking now their customer health continuously and scoring each customer for that health, we were also able to help provide them a bunch of data that allowed them to much more accurately and much earlier forecast customer revenue quarters in advance. So for example, our model flagged a customer at high risk for churn. We could calculate that they were 43% likely to churn. If we calculate them as medium risk, they were only 8% likely. And if they were low risk, 1%. And so with this data, Andy's team are now able to forecast customer revenue and retained ARR much further out, 2 to 3 quarters out, with a much higher degree of accuracy. And so based upon those successes, we've had the ability to expand that partnership with Abrigo into 3 additional predictive models for different use cases. So for different products, credit, lending, and risk, and fraud detection products specifically, but also, revenue churn models to capture down renewals. And so it's just proved to be a very, very strong proof point for the power of this solution.
That is great, Chris. And as I mentioned, there's not a marketing or sales organization that doesn't anchor their acquisition approach around their ideal customer profile. I see Reef as that same anchor on the back end of a sales lifecycle. I feel like that machine learning backtesting approach to retention is going to have to be part of every single sales and marketing strategy within each organization, just like ICP is today. So
yeah, and it's bringing essentially to customer success and post-sales what marketing has been doing for decades.
Absolutely, Chris. And I think that's where the value lies. So let's talk about partnerships. As you know, partnerships can be anything from strategic necessities to pure publicity plays, right? So you recently partnered with us. Can you walk us through kind of the strategic rationale behind that decision? What essential gap does Movate's partnership fill for Reef? And how does it accelerate your mission?
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're very, very excited about this partnership with Movate. As we were looking for partners to help us scale our growth, there's kind of 2 vectors, one of which is experience in the space and working with common clients, and others is skills that Movate has that we don't have that help us grow our business. And so it became obvious for us that Movate was a critical piece of our growth strategy. What I see or we see are the unique things you bring come in a few areas. You have years of experience in providing sales and renewals services to large technology companies globally. So you talk the language, you understand the problems, and they rely on Movate, right? They see you as a trusted partner to help them drive growth and customer retention and revenue. So that's critical because you have that experience, you understand the challenges. The other thing about it, though, is you have deep and proven experience managing your clients' applications and their data systems, both deploying and managing use of those systems and the data that we actually need to build our predictive churn and expansion models. So one of the key areas we need to scale our business comes in managing the onboarding of new clients, and which typically focuses on how do we get access to that data and how do we organize that data to make it AI ready. And Movate provides a lot of critical skills in both of those areas that we're going to need to help us scale. And then lastly, and most exciting, I think, as we look forward to where the market's headed, is your proven ability in building AI agents for your clients. You're uniquely skilled and experienced in doing that type of work. And one of the areas that our clients are looking to experiment more and more in 2026 is how do they use the unique AI-ready data that we generate on every one of their customers' health to power not just the current high touch and human CS, but as they look to leverage digital CS and then more AI customer retention agents it's going to be critical that they partner with those that know how to build those AI agent solutions, which is what Movate is so experienced at. And so partnering with Movate there is strategically important for us.
Great. And that's exactly what we saw in Reef, right? You shaved years and years off our ability to bring a kind of an AI-centric approach to the back end of that acquisition, reduction, churn reduction life cycle. So to us, it seemed like a great fit as well. So
what do you guys, can I ask a question? I'm just curious, when on the agentic side, where are you guys seeing success, and where do you think that, the partnership could help Movate?
well, for us, it's the same, kind of ultimately we're building these agentic AI agents for different programs. And there's always, to your point, there's usually 3 tiers of risk, right? You got high, medium, and low. And you want different models to approach each of those sectors, right? So the high risk, we may have a combination of a live agent, kind of humans in the loop, but then the medium and low risk churn we can address really completely with our agentic AI agents and the Reef information roadmap that it provides. So for us, it was a extremely kind of strategic partnership. And the biggest piece, other than just pure, kind of brute force to chase the attrition challenges, like looking at just contracts that were going to expire or some lower usage, your system gives us the ability to go back and, using that back testing model, validate exactly by looking at the last 18 or 24 months and truly validating what are those key components that are going to make our prioritized list very, very accurate. So that was the thing that really drew us towards the partnership and had that ability to partner with our app dev team and to create that kind of 360-degree approach to retention. That was big for us.
Well, and I imagine, given all the exposure you have to different agentic use cases, that, as you guys continue to develop those types of solutions, there might be different applications for AI agents, but it's exciting that you guys are kind of at the bleeding edge of working with the technology companies that are trying to test those technologies. So we're excited to leverage your experience there.
Great. Well, looking forward, let's talk a little bit about if you can share a sneak peek into the Reef roadmap, right? Perhaps some key features, products, strategic initiatives that your team, potentially in collaboration with Movate, is most excited about delivering next.
Yeah, I think there's the kind of the standard blocking and tackling, right? We're going to continue to expand the data types we can bring into our predictive models, improve our ability to automate how our platform collects and analyzes and delivers back that data, and the churn expansion alerts to client systems, right? We continue to push this vision that nobody needs more technology to log into. What they need is technology that pushes them signals into their existing platforms where their teams are working today. So we'll continue to work and automate those tapes. But as I mentioned, the really kind of sexy, exciting stuff is exposing, this new customer health, what we call net revenue retention intelligence data layer that our solution is creating, this metadata on their clients' customer base and their health, and making that available for AI agents, like you just mentioned. And we're excited mostly in the development there, because that's where customers are going. That's where they're saying, I can't continue to run high-touch customer success. I can outsource and leverage Movate as a way to try to create scale. But even at some point that reaches, its maturation point. There's only so far you can do on cost controls and optimization. At some point you have to find ways to drive growth. And a lot of that's going to come from how do they leverage technology on the AI side to cover the long tail of their customer segments that they can't cover with people, but they can't sacrifice net revenue retention in the process. And so we're really excited to see where that goes. And there's other use cases I'm sure that'll come up that are going to rely on, your data capabilities and our data capabilities. And we're just looking forward to continuing to try to support where the market goes. Are you guys seeing anything on your side? I'm curious where you guys see the strategic opportunities.
Yeah, Chris, we're seeing stuff that are right down, the middle of the plate of what you're talking about, right? As competition gets more and more competitive, and the acquisition costs are higher and higher, more and more companies are coming to us to say, how do I save the companies that are falling through on the back end? I have to apply a larger percent of my mental focus and dollars on the customer retention lifecycle. And I truly see Reef as that model that becomes, as I mentioned, as common in a strategy as an ideal customer profile is on the front end, identifying those exact ideal customer profile attributes that are going to lead to attrition and saving those folks after all the effort and expense was made to acquire them. We don't want them walking out the back door. So I think that's really, the big piece to where I see essentially, a product like Reef in every organization saving their customers before they have to go chase them down. As we've mentioned before, it's a retention call versus a save call. And in my business, I know very well how difficult a save call is, right? Once they're gone, it's very difficult to get them back. But if we know struggling 6 months in advance, that call is a very different call. And that's the call we want to have with the customer base prior to them searching the market, finding another solution, and then giving notice. So I think that Reef's the solution for that. I appreciate your time. I think this was an insightful session. Thanks for sharing your experiences and future vision with our listeners, Chris. And as always, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to join you today. It's always a lot of fun to talk with you again, and look forward to next time.
Awesome. Hey, thank you everyone for tuning into this episode of Movate Talks. Stay tuned for more episodes. Take care.
Thank you for listening, and do share your thoughts in the comments section. We can't wait to bring you the next episode, so stay tuned for more.